Hello, FightFit family. We are live for the FightFit podcast number 10. We've got Mal McGuinness on the podcast today. Really lucky to have Mal here today. Thank you so much for coming in and sparing some of your time for us.
My pleasure.
Mal has just retired from 22 years on the Victorian Boxing and Combat Sports Board. Did I get that right?
It's almost.
Almost.
Boxing and Combat Sports Board of Victoria.
Oh, Victoria. Wow. So, first of all, Mal, how did you get involved in combat sports and fighting yourself?
Well, I started on the board in 1997, and how that came about was that there was amalgamation of two boards. The government changed legislation because it's a regulatory authority, so it's all governed by laws and acts of parliament. So at the time, there was two different boards. There was a pro boxing board, and there was a martial arts board. So two different areas. The pro boxing side of the things was controlled or chaired by Ron Casey, who was the chairman of North Melbourne Footy Club, and he was the boss of Channel 7 here in Melbourne for many years. Very well known boxing authority as well. That's why he had a close association with the boxing. So the government of the day in 1996, as it turned out, decided to bring the two boards together and just have one board and control pro boxing and combat sports. In those days, it was martial arts. So, so they changed the law, but under the constitution of the board, they included a position for a member of Victoria Police, which I was at the time. So, the chief commissioner of the day knew my background in boxing and combat sports, and he selected me to be his representative. So,
is that an opportunity that you sort of jumped at, having had a little bit of experience in there?
Sure, yeah. It's just, it was just a free pass for me as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And I could go to meetings and go to the fights and in company time. So, yeah, sure, I jumped at that. So,
and how sort of different was the martial arts, combat sports and boxing world back then as it is today?
Back then, considering the boxing world has been very much the same in all the years that I've known it. I can go back to when I was a little boy and historically see how it's progressed through the years and the highs and lows of professional boxing. But combat sports, there was only the kickboxing basically in those days, and it's developed, with your MMA and your Muay Thai and all the other avenues of contact combat sports. Initially, in the old days, they used to include some karate and Kyokushinkai karate, full contact karate, but it's not the real essence of what should be regulated, because judo and the generic martial arts should be controlled themselves. They're not deemed to be full contact sports in a ring, if you can imagine it.
So it's only once they're under that bracket of mixed martial arts that they really need to be governed as one body.
Mixed martial arts, as you know, came fairly late in the scene, through UFC in America. And it doesn't hurt me to tell you that from day one, the board that I belong to, we were always supported UFC and MMA. But it was governments of those days, whether they were either persuasion, Labor or Liberal, they didn't want to have anything to do with it.
They're not really sort of the fighting types, are they?
It doesn't attract votes.
Yeah. If it was cage debating, they might be more onto it.
Play sports. They run a mile away from any combat sports.
So they don't want to have their name attached to it.
And they had to realise that it was a legitimate combat sport. It has become legitimate, and you must progress with combat sports because things change and the whole arena changes. So the best way to have any influence or control over it is to have the government control it as such. And keep it within the same confines of other regulations and rules that govern boxing and
other contact sports in general as well, because they all have the.
So it's just the whole thing about the act and rules and regulations for combat sports, the primary concern, our primary concern was occupational health and safety of the people that get in the ring.
Yep.
Looking after their best interests.
Yep.
So making sure that they're competent to get in there in the ring, competent with their skills. We try very hard to make sure that people are matched evenly.
Yep.
Doesn't always work, but there's criteria around that. So it's OH&S, the people in the industry. Unfortunately, during my time, we've had 2 deaths in the ring that become coronial inquests.
Yeah.
So, and out of those sort of things, there's recommendations for health and safety all the time. So we're mindful of looking after people in the ring.
Yep.
We're mindful about their careers, about their knockout ratios and things like that. If they become injured or they're not displaying enough skill, we look at them, we'll suspend them, even take licenses off them. And in the past, we've also had to tap people on the shoulder and tell them to retire because they've, in our minds, they've probably had
too much when you get someone who's a real journeyman, I guess.
And we can also recommend that they go off and have medical testing such as MRIs to see how they're going in the
cognitively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess that's a real sort of issue with professional combat sports is accumulative damage to the brain.
Huge issue for us. And it's something we've always monitored from day one on the board, and it's about concussion, and it's been one of my primary concerns is the amount of cumulative punishment people can have.
We've just had a question come through saying, what about corporate shows?
Corporate shows, we license people to fight on corporate shows as the same as professionals. So,
so we've got a few of our own, obviously the FightFit challenge and the corporate box.
We look at corporate shows as like the heroes to zeros.
Yep.
Zeros to heroes.
Yep. More like it. Yep.
as its own market. It's protected.
Yep.
Using bigger gloves, and the contestants come from the same gym. They know each other's ability. They're well matched. There's less likelihood for greater harm.
Yep.
But we consider that because it's a professional promotion, people are paying to get through the door.
Yep.
That's when you come under our notice, and people are fighting in front of people that basically paid money to come through the door. So then it becomes a professional promotion.
Yep.
So we license people that fight in that ring under our own terms, and that covers them by way of having government authority watching the proceedings, making sure they're licensed, making sure all the blood testing's done, making sure that the doctors are happy with them to compete.
Yep.
So that
I had to go through quite a rigorous process when I did the FightFit challenge myself. So it's quite well guarded, that
absolutely
whole thing.
Absolutely. And it's a must. No one should be getting in the ring unless they're
sufficiently capable of. Exactly right.
Yeah.
So you were obviously around for UFC and the cage being enabled in Australia.
Yeah.
Now, in the USA, there's a new trend or a new thing that's being enabled now, bare knuckle boxing. I'm not sure if you've seen that.
I have.
And if you're aware of the implications of that as a sport and the risks, and I'm just wondering what your opinion is on that.
Is that it probably will you wouldn't see it here legally. You may see it illegally. I don't know.
You might see it in his backyard somewhere.
Well, it exists anyway. So but you wouldn't. I doubt whether any government of the day would want to see bare knuckle fights.
Yep.
They'd want to see protection around the fists. I could see an exemption for like the 4-ounce gloves, like the MMA guys wear. I could see that happening one day.
Yep.
Because there's, you can strike in an MMA bout. So why can't you strike in, say, a cage doing Muay Thai?
And also, people are throwing knees and elbows as well. Yeah. And I think the argument for bare knuckle is that the surface area of the glove or of the knee or the elbow is quite a lot larger. So in terms of cognitive damage, it can do a lot more damage. But if you're bare knuckle boxing, you're going to be a lot uglier. You're going to be cut open a lot easier.
It's very messy.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of big heavyweights that fought recently over in America, and their facial injuries were fairly
Yeah, I don't think they pay too much mind. I think there maybe a few of them are too far gone to really worry about that. Yeah. So you're also in the Victoria Police for quite a while. What exactly did you do for the Victoria Police?
Well, I started off. I grew up in Collingwood and Northcote, and I came to the police force late in life. I was 28 when I joined, so I travelled overseas with my wife prior to that, and I read a funny book about policing, and I thought this would be a hoot. So when I got back, I was in the public service. So when I got back, I signed up, and in about 6 weeks from getting back from overseas, I was out the academy. So but I ended up working at Collingwood in uniform about 3 or 4 years, and then I went into a task force down in St Kilda. It was in relation to child prostitution and pornography. And from there, I went to the CIB at Footscray and worked there for a few years, chasing people. And
you must have met some colourful characters, especially down in Footscray.
Yeah, well, that was was good.
Yeah.
And from there, I went to the crime squads and spent a lot of years in different crime squads, and taught detectives at detective training school for a while. And, got into some. I went from there to St Kilda CIB for a while on promotion. So worked around a few places.
Yeah. What was the most memorable time of your time in the police?
So I've deleted it.
Have you?
I've worked a lot of interesting jobs and done a lot of interesting things. And you certainly you leave the police force. So I retired 11 years ago. So you leave it far worse condition than what you go in.
Oh, really?
You go in all bright-eyed and bushy tail, and you spat out at the other end.
Yeah, fair enough. But it did lead you to being on the board of.
Well, look, it's the best. One of the best things that happened to me.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of wonderful people in the fight game. And I started going to fights when I was a little kid, and I got into boxing through a friend and had a few fights, and you learned a lot about the history of the game.
Yeah.
Boxing. I'm sort of coming up 70 years of age, so I can talk about old broken down fighters that I knew in Collingwood that fought in the Depression days. You're talking in the 30s. There were a few different fight stadiums around Melbourne in those days. Like the Festival Hall, there was Prahran Stadium, Richmond Stadium, the Fitzroy Stadium, and fighters would go around from stadium to stadium, might have 3 fights a week, so they could put food on the table for their family. So these guys would have a lot of fights, but there's some old characters amongst them. You meet a lot of good people in the fight game.
Yeah, there are definitely some characters.
I've made some wonderful friends over the last 22 years. And that includes people I knew before.
Yeah, you must have seen some really good athletes come and go and have amazing careers. Sammy Solomon's just retired.
Well, Sam
Mundine.
Was just a kid when I started, and to see his longevity is just extraordinary. And you think, how can they do it? But Sam has got that style of boxing, which gives you that longevity.
Yeah.
And like the guys that are running into punches all the time, they're going to have a pretty rugged, tough career. But
he moves away.
Fairly smart on their feet, and get their range and get in and get out. Or clinch, and try and stay out of trouble. They can have a long career. And I think Sammy's experience was that he had his kickboxing experience, so that gave him fairly good insight about distance and movement, and range. Whereas, you're boxing, you're straight in each other's face. So that's, can be very difficult.
Sammy's also incredibly durable as well, and very, very fit. Takes good care of himself.
his whole sense of purpose in life has been boxing.
Yeah.
And he's been totally focused on it. It's it's just ruled his whole life for so many years. So, and that's given him a lot. But it's like everything else, like me being on the board. My time is up. I've got to make way for someone else to come through. And Sam, people like Sam, they've got to realise that stage that's enough. They've got to be able to walk away from that.
Yeah.
But still maintain their interest by opening a gym, training people, having that passion, training up a fighter, going to the fights, and that's how it goes on and on.
Yeah, I think that's probably his next step is really focusing on his gym, and he does work with the Salvation Army as well. And I take the some of the homeless community down to his gym on Thursdays, and he trains the guys. So that's a pretty cool thing that Sammy and I get to share.
That's great.
Yeah. So you must have met a lot of really sort of interesting characters in the boxing world. Do you have anyone in particular who stands out to you?
We can talk about they're all good people.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why, because in all my years, and we're talking about gangsters, and we're talking about good people, ordinary people, all the characters. People go to the fights, it's their night off. They don't want to go to the fights and cause problems. All my years, you've never seen any big dramas. They've always happened outside. Very rarely have I seen fights in an audience. And as I say, whether you're talking about gangsters or good people or ordinary citizens, they go for the night out. They go, that's their enjoyment. And they go out and have a few drinks or watch a good show, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I see all that. I met a lot of interesting, colourful people over the years, and I can have the same conversation I'm having with you now. I always treat people the way they treat me. And that's pure respect until
absolutely it's a good way to be.
Goes the other way, and then it's a different set of rules.
Yeah. How about in terms of like big personalities is more what I'm referring to in terms of the boxing world. Like you got big personalities like Anthony Mundine.
Sure. Yeah. Anthony hasn't fought down here a lot. We've seen him occasionally.
Yeah.
But Anthony's what you see is what I see.
Yeah.
The big entourage and his mystique or his self-importance.
Yeah.
You hear stories about him, which I wouldn't repeat, but he's the sort of he's an enigmatic sort of personality, and larger than life. People would say that when you get to know him, he's not like that. He's really a different, personable sort of person.
Yeah,
I've yet to see that.
Yeah, it's often a bit of a marketing ploy.
Yeah. So you hear all sorts of stories, but we don't tend to see a lot of that because we don't get to know them as much. The people that Victorians that we've seen fight a lot, we have a lot more life experience with them because we talk to them. Well, I do anyway. I like to talk to all the contestants, get to know them, get to know their personalities. Some are much more warmer and friendlier than others. That's human nature.
Just like anyone, I guess.
But got some terrific people I've met. And hopefully, I'll still keep in contact. I will keep in contact for sure. So, and I'll get to the fights occasionally. Stick my nose in and say hello.
Do you have any sort of particular nights that you remember? Any fights that you remember that stick out to you as some of the best that you've seen?
More recent ones, some good Muay Thai fights. Classic fights. The guys have given their heart and soul and all. So I think I mentioned it before. I tend to go to the combat sports more than the boxing because usually we will have boxing and kickboxing or Muay Thai on the same night. And then it's a matter of staff covering each event. Well, I usually manage to go to combat sports because it's much friendlier than boxing, and I tend to know more people in combat sports than boxing. That's just the way it works out.
Yeah.
You got to imagine I've seen over my 70 years, probably thousands of fights. And
it'd be hard to whittle them down.
Good ones, and I've seen some disasters too.
Yeah.
And I flinch when people get knocked out pretty badly.
Yeah.
I feel like jumping in the ring and just catching their head. I've seen some scary things, and I hate seeing friends that I like get belted.
Yeah.
So that can be a little bit distressing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, look, I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of fights.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of tough people get in the ring.
Yeah.
And they've got massive ticker to get in the ring and do what they do.
Mm.
A lot of respect.
Yeah. Do you think that it's very different? Have you seen many sort of when you've gone over to Asia? Have you seen many fights over there as well, or is it more over here?
No, I stay away from it.
Yeah.
Really. I go away to enjoy myself. So
yeah,
I've been to Asia a fair bit, but no, the fight game here has been my own little world.
Yeah.
And enjoyed every minute of it. So
yeah,
it's been a great ride.
yeah. What have you loved the most about being involved in the fight game over here?
Oh, look, it's just it's the respect of having the respect of the participants that want to get in the ring and have a crack.
Mm.
It's not something that a lot of people want to do or aspire to do, or whether they have ability to do it or the confidence to do it. But I admire the people that make it their craft, that get really good at it, and get in there and give it a red hot go.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys around that are totally committed to whatever their discipline is.
Yeah.
And we're talking about it before. I've got great respect for guys getting into MMA.
Yeah.
The skill sets, your stand-up game, your ground game, and just your overall conditioning. I've never seen guys that are so conditioned for their sport.
Yeah.
Their core body strength is just amazing. And I've got a lot of respect for those guys. The guys that are giving I admire Muay Thai, good Muay Thai experience for their craft. To me, it's like a chess game. And you see the way guys work each other out, and then it starts off slow and then it accelerates, takes off. I admire the guys in Muay Thai. Kickboxing's on a wane. There's still some good kickboxers around, but it's not as popular as it once was.
Yeah.
And boxing has traditionally always been up and down.
Yeah.
In my year in the late 60s, there was a lot of fighters around. There's fights on every Friday night at Festival Hall, and Monday night you had TV ringside. So there's a lot of fighters around and a lot of people training, but traditionally it's been up and down.
Yeah.
There's been times where it's been fairly slow.
Yeah. Well, so we've got a question coming through. So do you think that combat sports industry in Australia gets a bad rap, or just in general gets a bad rap, or an unfair rap?
I don't think so. I think there's got to be some sort of control, whether it's deregulated control or whatever. But boxing and combat sports is now controlled in Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, New South Wales, and to some extent ACT. Any show that's likely to be unmanaged is Queensland. There's no regulations in Queensland or Tasmania. So generally, if you want to try and get away with something, you can go to Queensland or Tassie, I guess. But I think, in fairness, the industry is quite good. It's vibrant, it's healthy. The good things we've introduced is the executive boxing thing. That's bringing a lot of people to the fights. It's bringing people that have never probably had an association or had an interest in going to fights, but they come along. Families can come along in a good environment, watch members of their kids or whatever, or their brothers and sisters, get in the ring and put on a good show.
Yeah.
So that's been good for the industry. MMA's been good for the industry because the spin-off to that is more gyms, different disciplines. It's given jiu-jitsu a focus to go on and compete.
Hugely popular at the moment, jiu-jitsu.
As I said, boxing's always going to be the same. Traditional pro boxing will be the same because you either have probably 4 or 5, or if you're lucky, 10 fights maximum, and then you drop out.
Yeah.
because it's not your caper.
Mm.
And then very few go on to have multitudes of fights.
Yeah.
For whatever reasons, there's no money in it.
Mm.
And you cannot make a living out of it.
Yeah. Do you think in terms of the sort of physical, mental, like well-being that you can get from participating in sports such as boxing,
Absolutely.
it gets a bad rap in that way?
Yeah, it depends what you want to do. If you want to go down the path of
I mean, just sort of
competing in the
in general, just using it as a form of meditation or as an outlet.
Well, it's discipline, and you've given good skill sets in boxing, but your rotation through boxercise is even better because you're under the pump all the time, and you're using good flexibility, endurance. Endurance is probably the key with boxing because you've got to be pretty fit to use up all that adrenaline.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when it goes, then you're relying on those reserves.
Yeah. And it's fabulous. It's fabulous as a group effort with your boxercise and things like that. It's fantastic.
Do you think that the the standard of the shows has improved over the past 22 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's an education thing. All the promoters now that are out there, they know the winning formula. If you've got a good business model, then you'll succeed. And there are some promoters that are more successful than others because of their management of their industry or their product. The boxers, the zeros to heroes, or the executive boxing, as we call it, is an established market now. And it's great for the industry because it attracts people into the industry
who would never normally otherwise do it,
or contestants. And it's fabulous, and it's been a great benefit. And as I said before, like the MMA thing, that's been great for the industry because it involves other combat sports.
Yeah.
But that's a serious training regime in itself.
Yeah.
And those guys, men and women, are the fittest people going around, I think. Extraordinary.
If you had to sort of forecast where you think the combat industry is going to go in Australia or worldwide in the future, would you have any sort of predictions?
I think the status quo remains. The only we've always been prepared for new forms of combat sports, and it's what happens in that square ring or the octagon or the cage, whatever people want to call it. So when you've got competition in there, people have devised different forms of combat. So now we've basically gone from MMA, and we're getting into areas of bare knuckle, and I think that's just probably too extreme for people.
You think that's pushing the envelope, pushing the boundaries a little bit? Yeah. I think just I think bare knuckle's a little bit less tasteful, perhaps, than
I don't think
than people can perhaps stomach.
A few boys in the club might see that, but
yeah,
gypsy boxing gloves, I suppose, or wrap knuckles.
I've glanced over it once or twice in my time. I'm following it pretty close, but I just think it's fascinating that it's evolved in that way. That something that's so sort of taboo is. Yeah, I don't really support it myself. I think that people need to look after their features a little bit more. Than that.
Good luck, Tom. But I don't think any government's going to condone bare knuckle fist fighting.
Yeah.
But who knows? I might live to see it.
Yeah. So what's next for you anyway, then, Mel?
Oh, my time is precious. When I retired, I needed some creative outlet to settle my brain, and I got into pastel painting, and I'm okay at that. So and I do a fair bit of prospecting as well when I can. So
very nice.
But and travel, camping, and I'll travel up to Asia a couple of times a year to see friends. So
that's awesome.
That's enough for me.
Awesome, mate. Well, Congratulations on an absolutely unbelievable
Joe.
career and having such
thank
an
you.
awesome impact on the combat sport industry in Victoria, and helping to keep it all above
No, it's
board,
fine. It's in good hands.
helping to keep many people safe and allow things like this to happen.
I'll just say the unique thing about our board is that there's been members come and go over the years, but everybody's fought in the ring, whether it's combat sports or boxing, pro boxing or amateur boxing. So all the members of the board know what it's like to compete in combat sports. So whereas other boards elsewhere in Australia, they're just members of the community pulled in to form a board. They don't necessarily have to know about the industry. So I think as a Victorian board, all the members have always been passionate about their involvement in the industry, and that's probably been a blessing for us, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, and it's often quite a controversy as well with judging in UFC events, and you get people who don't necessarily know a lot about the sport, but they're sort of being sanctioned by the Athletic State Commission or whoever sanctions them to be judges, and they're not necessarily the best people for the job.
Most of our officials have had some involvement in combat sports.
Yeah,
and we've given them some training as well from the industry, try and improve their skills. And it's judging is subjective, but judging is an art form in itself to know how to judge. And it's not. We used to see some of the old. Tell me if I'm going on. But,
no, please, by all means.
Old judges from the old days, they used to try and count punches on their fingers and toes, and they get lost in the round.
Yeah.
But you can, the best way of describing a good judge, it's like a pendulum. It's like plus, it's either going that way or that way during the fight, and that's the only way you can keep up with it. You cannot, unless you're a mathematician or a genius, you're not going to remember all the clean, effective punching, the clean techniques. So it's the best way I like it. It's like a pendulum. So it's sort of +1, +2, or it might be swinging back the other way. And at the end of your 3 minutes or 5 minutes, in case of MMA, you should be either one side or the other. Not seeing in the middle and giving a drawn round. You should be able to make a positive outcome.
Or in the case of a 10-8, it's been a few knockdowns.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, how about weight cuts? That's another thing that I'm sort of interested in.
Weight cuts is a big issue.
Yeah. I think that it's incredibly dangerous and can wipe off. It can wipe off years from somebody's life as well.
Some of us would in the WBC boxing, they have weigh-ins progressively throughout your training as you get into fight time. So they're keeping a check on your weight, so you come in, the right way at the right time, sort of thing. With some of us would probably like to see, weigh-ins not 24 hours because people load up. You see guys come in, 5, 6 plus kilo.
Yeah.
Heavier.
That's pretty easy to do when you've shed so much water weight.
Yeah, and it's just we've had people turn up to weigh-ins and they've been so translucent. Their skin is, and they've been off the hospital straight after.
Yeah, you look at some of the guys in the UFC and they look completely emaciated. They look like they can barely sort of walk or
in 24 hours. It's amazing. But I think I've always said to fighters, you're better off to come in on your natural walking around weight, if you can. Yeah. Because that's got to be the limit. If you're training regularly, you should be training within certain limits that you're not going to have to lose a lot of weight.
Yep.
Leading up to your fight. And
to that end, do you think that there would be there could be some sort of regulation where people have their body mass and their skin folds and their sort of
all police that.
And then you couldn't have like a natural weight that people need to fight at?
It's too hard to manage for a government to do that.
But there couldn't be, say, a limit whether you can't go below this weight because of your stature?
You would have to. You can't enforce that.
Yeah.
Because the regulators don't go around to the gyms to see what people are walking. The natural walking around rate, what they're doing, how much weight they've got to cut. You hear anecdotal stuff. Like the last guy that died in Victoria, a professional boxer, he was from Queensland, came down here to fight for an Australian bantamweight title. I think it was a bantam. And
Mm.
but in the final week, he was like 58 or 59 kilo, and he had to cut to 52.
Mm.
We didn't know about this. Right? You find out in the course of a coronial inquiry. So he had to drop 6 or 8 kilos within a week. And for a guy that size, is a fair amount of weight.
Yeah, that's a big percentage of your body.
But he was clearly winning the fight, and he collapsed. But you think, well, was it because of all the weight he lost? But there's other factors. And, we anecdotally hear about fighters being concussed leading up to a fight, bashed, and even having concussions in training and sparring in the gym.
Yeah.
You don't hear about that until afterwards.
Yeah.
And you think, well, if we knew about that, we wouldn't let these people fight on the night, because those sort of things can only accentuate personal injury or concussions and lead to further damage. So
yeah. We've got Bash asking some very interesting questions here. So does the board get enough funding and support from the government?
The board, the way the board set up is that the board members get paid less than judges or referees to attend fight shows. They don't. It's not a big funding money. It's not a money spinner for the government. The only money they make out of it is what they get from fighters' registration fees and the shows. And last year, I think it was last year, the fees went up for promotions by $100 or something like that.
Yeah.
But it used to be. I'll get on to other matters in a sec. But we don't generate money. We only generate money through licensing. So, and the government has to supply people in the office to full-time staff. There's 4 full-time staff to do all the paperwork. So there's salaries there, things like that. But they're usually running in the negative rather than the positive.
Yeah.
We raised the fees for promotions the last couple of years because the way it works overseas, if the UFC want to run a show in Las Vegas, the Nevada Athletic Commission, they've got a set of fees. So if you've got an arena that's got 20,000 people or 40,000 people, they work it out on how many people are likely to go to that show. So they could have a licensing fee to run, or promotion fee of thousands of dollars. But in Victoria, it's always been $100 to run a show. So UFC could come here, run a show, their first show, 55,000 people or whatever it was, it cost them $100.
Yeah.
So we never generated a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's more of a service, and because there's legislation governing the industry, it has to, things have to take place.
Yeah.
They have to have a board. They have to have licensing, and that's their government control. So there's no money in. The only people that make the money are the promoters.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, nice. And
sorry, Bash.
And also, how do they score MMA versus boxing? That's another question.
How they're scoring?
MMA versus boxing.
Exactly the same.
Except for boxing has more rounds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In Victoria, we have the 10-point must system.
Yeah.
So, same for all the combat sports. We say, well, because we've got our rules in Victoria, it's 10-point must system. In boxing, we don't have standing 8 counts.
Yeah.
So you've got the 3 knockdown rule in effect.
Yeah.
But in combat sports,
they get dived on.
We get the standing 8 count. So, and that's in boxing. What we said was that if you've got a standing 8 count, you're only prolonging the punishment because you get knocked down, stand up, knocked down, stand up. So the round is fought to a TKO. So the referee or the doctor or the board can stop the fight. So in Victoria, a doctor can stop the fight or we stop the fight if the referee hasn't done his job properly. So it goes to, in boxing, it goes to its natural conclusion. There's a TKO, the fighter doesn't look well, the fight's stopped, waved off. But in the other combat sports, You know, you can get a leg kick or something like that, or you can get a standing 8 count.
Mm.
Until such times the referee says, "Well, you can't go on."
Yeah, I guess there are those
Yeah.
differences
So
between.
that's a safety concern there.
Yeah.
But there's 10-point must system.
Mm.
The winner gets a 10 round.
Mm.
Very rarely should there be a 10-10 round.
Yeah.
You get the knockdown, it becomes a 10-8. Unless, of course, excuse me, that after that knockdown, the other
The other guy comes back in a big way.
fought his way back substantially in the round.
Yeah.
But ordinarily it's a 10-8. There's a couple of knockdowns, it'll be 10-7.
Yeah. Got another one from Bash again.
I don't know where you can read that far.
Wouldn't it be better to charge the promoters based on the number of fights that they have on a card?
You've got to have a minimum of 30 rounds. So if you had 3 fights, 3 10-rounders, they could all end in the first round, and people wouldn't have had their dinners, their fees, or wouldn't have had enough to drink.
Yeah.
So, no, I think it's got to be a standard fee, because you're going to have the promoter's got to put on entertainment. So he's got to have, we say, at least 30 rounds of fighting. So it could be, you still have 10 3-minute rounds.
Yeah.
Still have, but it's usually more than that. But I think the promoter's going to put on a show. He's got to put on a fair fight card.
Yeah.
Because he's going to expect a lot of people to turn up.
Yeah.
I think the public has got a right to expect that the contests are evenly matched.
Yeah.
And chumps are not fighting the local hero.
Yeah.
Which happens.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
it does.
So I think you've got to, if you're putting on a promoter's going to put on entertainment and show, it should be the whole package. The promoter can also run pro-ams, but you need substantially more professional fights than amateur. So usually the way it works is there might be an amateur card, a small amateur card on prior to the pro show commencing. So you might have 2 sets of officials as well, so overlapping. But you can do that.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up, mate. I think we've covered a lot of grounds, and I've certainly learned a lot from this podcast.
Thanks, Joe.
I had no idea about the detail in which you guys go to regulate and make sure that we can enjoy this awesome sport. Bash is in the room, guys. This kind of reminds me like one of those when you see people at dinner and they're like on their phones, but they're right there. Okay, so we've got one question from Bash saying, "What did you like most about working with Bernie Balmer on the board?" Bernie Balmer on the board. Sounds like a band.
Bernie the attorney is a well-known criminal lawyer out about Melbourne, and has been for a long time. And I knew Bernie a long time before we both came on the board at the same time, because, as I said earlier, it changed, and the government of the day wanted fresh blood on the board, and Bernie and myself were chosen out of the hat to come on board.
Yeah.
And and Bernie and myself, we're a good team. Zig and Zag, or Laurel and Hardy.
Yin and Yang.
A lot of people we've had a lot of funny experiences over the years. A lot of the people on the dark side used to think that I was the lawyer and Bernie was the copper. Funny experience one day. We did some work with Channel 9 down in Richmond, and we on our arrival, we saw this guy down the street, and he smashing car windows, and smashed a car window and pulled the computer out. So I was the wheelman, and I nearly ran over him, and Bernie jumped out and captured the punter. And in all the confusion, I'm talking to you like I am now.
Yeah.
And, Bernie was the copper. And I
Did
was
you
the
represent
lawyer.
him, the punter in the court?
It's funny. We've had a few run-ins like that. We work pretty well together.
Yeah.
And we're still the best of friends.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, we're still great friends.
Starsky and Hutch.
Oh yeah.
So Dean Dalek has asked, who do you find? Yeah, he's watching. He said who
for Collingwood, Dino.
He wants to know who you find more attractive out of Paul and Bash.
What about Eddie and Dean? Paul and Bash. Well, I don't know.
Just because Bash is here, you don't have to be biased.
Rugged, handsome look about him, just a little bit older than Bash.
And Bash has got that boyish sort of cheeky charm about him.
Good on you, Dino.
Dean says thumbs up.
Hope you're well, my friend. Say hello to that cheeky brother of yours.
Anyways, mate, we should probably let you get back to it, mate. Thank you so much for coming on.
I have to be in bed with my hot chocolate by about 9 o'clock. So
oh, geez, we better get you out of here. Got to rush you out the door.
It's been a long day. I'm way past my bedtime.
Thanks a lot for coming on, Mal. Once again, thanks for all the awesome work you've done in allowing us to enjoy this sport that we all so love and get so much out of. Yeah. Anyways, thank you very much, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My absolute pleasure.